As Africans in general, as human beings, we are natural storytellers. To a large extent, storytelling is really around the extension or, the promulgation of ideas, essentially. And that's why you see, people who are great storytellers have a way of putting in the story they're telling some sort of idea that is sort of larger than them, or something that they've always wanted to do or achieve. They put that in the story. I think that it's so important for those of us in the global south that this technology is able to help us, even if it's not your primary medium, but something that brings your ideas to life very quickly, And let me speak about some advantages. Now, if you're a filmmaker who is a traditional filmmaker, and by the way, I don't think that, let me just address this thing around AI is going to take your jobs. AI will not take your jobs. You will lose your job to the person who understands AI. So you need to figure out how to upskill and understand how the technology works. It's to your advantage. Now, if you're a filmmaker and you're like, okay, so how does AI help you in your process? Now, imagine if you had an idea for a film and, all you're trying to do is, I'm trying to find funding for the film, I'm trying to get investment in the film, but you can bring it together and you can create something that you've seen, very short sizzle reels or trailers that brings to life what your idea is about. That can be something that you can pitch to an investor to say, this is what the film is going to look like in terms of the lookbook, in terms of the character bible, the scene, the locations. My concept is you have that already. So that already helps you advance, what it is that you're doing in your what they call pre-visualization process of your filmmaking. And then things like VFX, VFX, as you know, is very, very expensive. If you're a producer, you put together like a budget sheet, post-production VFX is really one of the most expensive items there. So these are things that I think that, AI can help us tackle as African filmmakers. So we're going to go back to esteemed panel. Now, for those of you who don't know, Afam built something fantastic called AI Studio NG, and that's how we met. When I started when I put out the information that I was going to start the festival, I started meeting up with people started reaching out to me. And then he reached out to me and said he had built this platform. And when he sent me the link, I was blown away. How will AI critically help us with African storytelling?
So AI allows us to do those kind of things because the cost is, helps us do that kind of stuff. Now, if you take some steps back, we have a whole lot of rich history that some people just come and just take a portion of it. I liken it to like an elephant, where you have 5 blind people trying to describe an elephant, right? So if one holds the trunk, it's going to describe that looks like a tree and stuff like that. So now we are the ones that are telling our own stories. We can now go back and retell some of the stories that we couldn't tell back in the day. AI can allow us to do those kind of things. 2 years ago, when the AI thing started, just very few people knew about it. I was one of those few that just got a look. So I saw some stuff. I was like, I tried it. It was nice. I was like, okay, it's still coming up. Let me just chill. And then last year, I saw some improvements in the AI stuff, and I was like, okay, good. It's time to get on this boat, because this boat is going somewhere. We won't miss it. Because it took me back to the days of when I got introduced to the internet. And for me, what was the great thing about getting started with the internet was the fact that I could send an email and the person would get it immediately. That was wow for me at the time. Because then, growing up at that time, if you send a letter to somebody, it would take like 2 weeks before they would get it. So for me, the wow factor was that I could send a letter here and the person anywhere in the world would get it the next second. So that was wow for me. So this time around, I decided, good, AI has come, because it took me just to that period, because it was like brand new, virgin land. So I said I was going to have to, instead of just being a consumer, because at that time when the internet came up, I was just a consumer. I was just using the tools that were available, right? And I decided this time around, no, I was going to have to build a tool that we could use, because it's all about control. The West are the ones that build the tool, and our own is just to use. So this time I said, no, let us also build tools that we can use for our own people, so our own people can pay in our own currency, because if you really want to use any of the AI models, you have to pay in dollars. That's just what it is. And some of them will actually ask you to pay like $200 first before you even start using. So I now decided, okay, I'm going to find a way of democratizing it so that people can just pay with the little naira they have, 5,000 naira, you already started using the platform. It's all about.
Thank you very much. And in addition to that, the Niger AI Film Festival has a community of over 500 AI creators, AI enthusiasts from across Africa and the world as well. Yeah. So nerves. Let's get back. For you as somebody who is experimenting, and I completely like your approach to no holds barred. You are very, very futuristic in your approach to things. What do you think is the strongest point and the biggest? I know we've spoken about the gains, we've spoken about what AI can do for us as African storytellers, but what do you think is the biggest advantage that we have using AI?
For me personally, the biggest advantage we have, I feel like our stories, right? It hasn't like a lot of our stories have not been told. For instance, this my sizzle I submitted. I don't know if anybody sizzle is reversed. It means sounds genesis. So when I submitted it some film festivals, and some people that were like looking at it, they were like, "Wow, I've never heard about this before. Wow, this is a new concept. This is a new. We've never heard it sounds novel to them." So I feel like the greatest advantage we as African storytellers have is that we are uncharted. Yes, that's the word, uncharted. So you can be the Christopher Columbus and go and find a new niche and then tell it to the world, and the world will be applause, give you a round of applause. So that's what I feel. Thank you.
What do you think, Afam? What do you think? What's your take on that?
Well, because we have so many stories. If you go to each village, they have their origin stories. We've not told those stories. I'm very sure if you talk to your parents, they'll tell you the origin story of your village. Those stories now, if you sit down and work on it, have a good writer on it, will bring out something that will be interesting to see. Before, you won't be able to do all those stuff because you'll be like, will this make money? Because it's still all about money at the end of the day. So once we can sit down and work out how we can tell these stories, if you remember the Wakanda story and stuff like that, it was like wonderful for the rest of the world. But we have so many of those kind of stories that have not yet been told. With AI, anybody can sit down and start writing those stories and then creating those stories and bringing them to life. So I think that's a good thing for us.
I want to speak more to things around policy, and then we'll talk about ethics. Now, I know what I always say when I'm on those panels and when I get to speak to people is that one of the challenges we have here is that we don't own anything. And what do I mean by that? We don't own our own data centers. We don't own any sort of servers where all these things are warehoused. Because if you look at it, and this is even beyond AI, for those of us who are on the internet, who are internet natives, you've got social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Every time you upload stuff, you don't, where is it going? It goes to a server in America, in Europe, somewhere. Now, imagine if you're a YouTube, you had a YouTube channel, right? And then you had 5 million subscribers, and then you are doing very well. But suddenly, one legislation completely changes the access, and somehow people who have, YouTube is no longer available to Africans. For some reason, what happens to all that stuff you've been building? What happens? So it's so important that we sort of build the capacity to own things. And that means investing in data. And this is something that has to do with intentional government involvement around building data centers, around investing in GPUs in data centers, that in such a way that we own the things that we're supposed to have. So as somebody who's built things, and somebody who is building models and trying to sort of work in that technology space as a builder, not just a consumer, what do you think we should be doing as a nation to actually forestall and to own our things?
Now, the West right now, they are building data centers like building houses.
Even in space.
As in every space they can get to build a data center, they will build one. Now, in Africa, we have some of the resources that allows that to happen, because one of the things about data center is how to cool those GPU down, which is water. Correct. So water is one of the issues, and we have these things here. We just need government to understand that these assets are very, very important to us. For instance, if you take TikTok, they had problems with America. America was like, you cannot carry our data and take it out somewhere else. You have to house the data in America. Correct. Right? But we don't really care about that at this point in time. All our data, all our social media, every single one of them is housed out there because government does not understand this kind of thing. But if tomorrow, those information that we are dropping, serious information, because you're having conversations about your family, your personal life, a serious government and hacker can settle down, take all those information, and then do irreparable harm to you because they have all your data. So I think for government, it is something that we can sit down and start working on. We need to start having our own data centers here. Although there are some companies that have data centers here because, for instance, the banks, they have all their data is housed here because, at least for security reasons, that's a good step, right? But we need more because it's not only bank data that is important. Our personal data, medical data, all those stuff is important. For me now, I can't even house my own data here. We need to have the capacity to be able to do that, because if we, all the different technologies that we have in this country, because we do have quite a whole lot of tech people in this country that have services, but most of them are housed outside. It's important we start thinking about doing that now, because other countries are already doing it. Yeah, everybody's trying to protect their data. Data is power. What you know about your other countries' information is power. Because if America wants to like get to us and stuff like that, all they have to do is just mine our data, find out every single thing they need to find out about us. It's very, very easy for them, and they know everything about us because all our data is housed over there. So
it's just, you look at Lagos, for instance, you know, it's essentially a coastline. You know, if you get out there and just look at right beside us is Echo Atlantic, and it's completely across the coastline. So imagine all the way to Ibeji, all that land, we're able to build it. We have the resources actually, build the data center there. It's very close to the water, and then we have it. I think it's so. But I was speaking with the professor that leads the National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. I know that they are doing, you know, under the auspices of the minister for, I think, in communication, Professor Bosun Tijani, and I know that they're doing some work, you know, especially around this, you know, because it takes a lot of intentionality. You know, we have to be very focused, because I think this is something that can unlock a lot of wealth, you know, and not just for the creative sector, but for the, you know, the tech sector, you know, that kind of thing, because to provide jobs, because AI is like, I think Sam Altman was saying that the next set of billionaires will come from AI, and we can see that happening, you know, from the kind of technologies that people are building with the software, you know, with the technology, the kind of things, solutions people are building with the technology, and the kinds of things it's going to solve. You look at things like agentic AI, where you're able to solve problems, you know, and things like that. Every business now has a bot, you know, thanks to AI, you know, that kind of thing. So there's so much, and I think for us, it's really around how we can, you know, zero in, and how we can help, you know, those of us who are in the creative space, the film space, the creative space, and actually create better, you know, bring our visions to life. Because I think there's nothing as bad as you have an idea in your head, but you can't bring it to life. But these days with ChatGPT or Gemini or DeepSeek, it's so easy. You know, challenge, one of the biggest issues with AI is authorship, ownership, intellectual property, you know, ethics, the ethical use of AI. You know, last year, SAG-AFTRA, that is the Actors Union, went on strike because, you know, they were protesting around how AI is completely taking away writers' jobs. Now, if you go back years ago when artificial intelligence is not actually new. It was coined by a professor sometime in 1955, and we've lived with AI. We don't know it. You know, let me give you an example. The autocorrect on your texting platform that's been there for years is AI. Just in case you didn't know, you were sending an email and it's trying to correct you. That's artificial intelligence. Now, but AI as we know it today, millions and millions was pumped into research, and a lot of content owners opened up a lot of their content for research purposes. Now, when it got to a point where the experiment was now very viable, we now started having the issues of IP. Oh, okay, so you've used my data to train your model. How am I going to get compensated? And that's why we have all these loopholes and all these challenges now with about compensation and the fact that things have been trained. Because when it was being trained, it was all experimental. But we've gotten to a point where the AI works, the GPTs work, but they've been trained on material, data sets. You know, so, and right now, the World Intellectual Property Organization, they're still trying to figure out legislation for AI. It's still something that is ongoing. Recently, Disney sued Midjourney for people's the ability for you to create characters like Shrek that are IP property. If you created something, because of the data sets that are being used to train it, who actually owns that thing you've created? You know, so these are areas that are still being worked on. But let me also say that there are companies that are also sourcing ethically sourced data, right, that have ethically sourced data. What does that mean? That means that if I'm building a model and the gentleman in the cap and the lady eating the popcorn, they have content, and I want to train my model with their content, I will pay them for that content. And so that if the users want to use it, the model has been trained on ethically sourced data. That is what's happening now. So there are companies, models, who are sort of pursuing that structure where anything, whether it's books, whether it's paintings, pictures, whatever it is, they are paying creators for that.
So when I'm creating my work, the ethical uses I check. So first of all, I know you've seen when I created my Godzilla in Lagos, right? It was from a well-known franchise, right? But because of it was for tests, right? I just said, okay, let me just do it. But if the movie had blown up to really, really big, it could be a really big problem.
Yeah, what I've been seeing. But
yes. It could become a really big problem. So those are some of the things now. And as I've made more films, I've like evolved. I've started trying to be original. So when you're making films with AI, it is really important for you to be as original as you can be, so that it won't affect you in the future, right? And also another thing about like AI and using it ethically is think about exams. Before you're awarded like a certificate or a title, they test you to see if you use that knowledge positively or negatively. Because now think about deep fakes, right? Not everybody should know how to use a deep fake, because if it falls into the wrong hands, they can use it to scam and to do. So that's why I have friends that would look at me and say, okay, you're an AI, help us and do this, help us and do this. But then I look at them very well. That's a check. I look at them. Are you going to use it positively or not? If you are going to use it positively, okay, maybe I might share with you. But if I see that you're not going to use it, I keep my distance. So those are the checks I make before I share, I do, and I make my films. So two things: I try to be as original as I can be, and then before I share information with whoever I want to share, I look at what they intend to do, and I give them tests. I test what they are trying to do.
This topic is actually very tight because the cat is already out of the bag. It will be hard to put it back in, right? Because deepfakes are already here, right? Before we were here, I saw a video. Davido was advertising something. You know, who is going to stop that, right? Now, the only people that can maybe stop that are from the model point of view. For instance, OpenAI has some stuff in place whereby if you have a human being in the generation, because I always get a whole lot of report back from my clients when they're trying to use some OpenAI models, it will give them an error. It will not generate such videos and stuff like that. You know, it will ask you, because the only way to be able to generate those kind of when you prompt with an image, the only way you can generate is that you have to now like add the character, in the sense that you already have an account, you've created that character. You can now add, say for instance, my name is Afam. I have an OpenAI account that is Afam. So if I want to now create a video around Afam, I can now do that. If I now want to now create a video around Davido, it's not going to allow it because it says you're not Davido. You know, you don't have rights to that. So, but that is only from the model end. Like for instance, the companies that already do this, those are the only ones that really can stop it. But other models are not stopping it. So if this one model stops it and then 10 other models allow it, who is going to stop it? Who's going to stop the bad actors? Because there will be bad actors. There's no two ways about it. So I really don't know how it's going to happen, but bad actors are going to be there. Tomorrow you will see someone that will else do. For instance, not even see somebody. He did a video and Tinubu was inside the video. Did Tinubu agree to be in the video? No. Who will stop him from putting Tinubu in the video? Nobody. It's his choice. So he's the only one that really can now say, okay, I don't want to do that, right? Except maybe we'll now have laws that say if you do this, you are in trouble, that can now put a stop to it. But that also is a thin line because you're also stopping creativity. Because from the beginning, if we didn't have this data sets to train with, we will not have what we have today. So the cat's out of the bag.
The legal structures around this conversation is still evolving. And from landmark rulings, we'll see, because it's very complex. Because, you know, from the US government to OpenAI to Meta, they've all been involved in this entire project of training models with data sets. Like, you know, Google VO is trained on YouTube information, YouTube videos.
So there are some platforms that individuals have like willingly given the AI tools access to use their their IP. So that's good for you.
When I was conceptualizing AI Studio, I actually thought about this idea in the sense that, for instance, now, I have different artist friends and stuff like that now. So if I want to now do an AI that snaps a picture with me and Davido sitting down, I can now do that. But the only way I can now do that legally is I have to go and meet Davido and license his image and say, yes, come and do, so that people can now use your likeness to now take pictures and stuff like that. Now, if you sit down and work on all of this for every artist, I think that is one way it can work because it's now legal. So when someone now pays me to generate an image with Davido, he has paid money. So Davido also now has a cut, right? That's one way I think that can work. But I think that's something is still in the future. This is something that can develop along the way.
Yeah. So just like in life, you cannot take a person's property without their consent. It's very simple. So you're building something and you need the person's voice, or you need their likeness, or you need whatever it is, you need to get consent. It's very simple. So even if it's your face at the end of the day, but it's somebody else's voice, they can sue you just based on the fact that you have used their voice without their consent. Now let me tell you, like 11 Labs is a classic example. I use a lot of 11 Labs at work, and what's interesting is that, you know, so you're looking for a voice to clone. Clone your voice. You have the rights to your own voice. So clone your voice, and then use that as voiceover to do whatever it is that you want to do. And what's also interesting is that apart from there are models like Hedra, you can clone your voice. There's 11 Labs, you can clone your voice. I think Free Pick as well, you can clone your voice and use it, you know, on various models. Now, what I try to do is, if I have once gotten consent from a colleague of mine because she has a great sounding voice to clone her voice, and it's at work, it's used for work stuff. So you must get consent. And they tell you when you are uploading a sample, a waveform of a sample of the voice, they will ask you clearly, we hope, please, make sure that you have taken the rights to use this voice. It's very, very, and there are some models like Veo. Veo will not allow you, animate the pictures of children. You cannot work on it. They tell you, no, it just won't work. Don't be afraid to experiment, because at the end of the day, as a creative, what's the point of being a creative when you can't experiment? And AI provides that opportunity for you to try out things. Just keep trying. Like every night before I go, I must discover something new. I must try out something. That's the only way we, because I tell people nobody knows where this technology is going. I tell people, but by the end of the year, we don't know what's going to happen. So it's a fun ride. We're all here for it, and let's keep prompting the future of African storytelling. Thank you so much.